A powerful cold front moves across southern Australia with damaging to possibly destructive winds and low-level snow. Satellite shows that swirl a cloud into a deep low pressure system which tracked over Adelaide overnight. Now this system is moving towards the east with a large pickup in weather expected across southern Queensland, New South Wales, ACT and Melbourne. We have a look at the rainfall observations. As that low tracked over Adelaide, we saw 3 stations break their daily May records. Now that was at Mount Lofty, Parafield and Edinburgh Air Force Base. In the hours since midnight this morning, there's been some stations in South Australia which have recorded damaging wind gusts in excess of 90 kilometres an hour. Now having a look at the severe weather warnings, they stretch from the Nullarbor in South Australia eastwards into much of New South Wales, the northern fringe of Victoria, however that's expected to sink southwards tomorrow, and parts of the southeast including Toowoomba, the southern reaches of the Sunshine Coast and the Gold Coast. Now this carries with it the risk of damaging wind gusts in excess of 90 kilometres an hour. However, there may be much smaller elements in there with showers and storms which may bring down some of the brisk winds to the surface, which will put us into that next category of destructive wind gusts in excess of 125 kilometres an hour. Now if we have a look at the forecast wind and rain, we can see the current situation with that cold front making its way across New South Wales and that low pressure system sitting up in the Mallee and Wimmera of Victoria with a settling down of the wind conditions over South Australia. And then as we move forward, we can see Canberra being affected later tonight, Sydney, and then also extending up into the New South Wales coast. Now overnight into Tuesday, we will start to see what was previously in a weak wind pattern. Melbourne will start to see some of those southwesterly winds come through, which is going to warrant that severe weather warning for damaging winds. And as we move through into Wednesday, we can see lots and lots of westerly wind. Tuesday into Wednesday, we can see lots of westerly winds still coming across the Great Divide there, and that'll provide yet another night of some pretty damaging winds, at least around the southern parts of the New South Wales Great Divide. Now if we have a look at the winds that are sitting 1.5 kilometres above the surface, these are very useful for forecasters because the winds are above the surface and don't really interact with topography and hence friction, and give us a really good idea as to where the damaging winds will be. And so it's no surprise all of these darker colours are lining up with the current severe weather warning largely. And then as we move into tonight, we can see some very strong winds starting to pick up around the Great Divide. Now this is going to be of particular concern, especially given the past 3 months have been really sodden with lots of rainfall. So a lot of the trees, a lot of the power poles are going to really struggle to stay upright in this brisk wind. And not only that, we do have lots of people who are flood affected and displaced and may be in temporary accommodation or structures that aren't engineered to stand some of these wind stresses. So it's important to be very conscious of this, especially in the northern part of New South Wales as we move into tonight. And we can see some very, very dark colours there. There was a hint of black just before I paused it. That's hinting at winds of 135 kilometres an hour. So that's extraordinarily strong winds, and the downslope winds will affect areas along that Great Divide and coastward. But as we move into Tuesday, there was a patch of winds through Victoria, and then Tuesday night we will see some of the damaging winds persist, including Sydney and then southwards towards Mallacoota. Now if we have a look at the forecast winds here, so I'll just bump it along to the snow. Sorry, apologies for that. We do have the snow levels here. That wind that's coming up from the southwest is introducing some pretty cold air to the area. So Tasmania, Victoria, southeastern New South Wales, and even up to the central tablelands of New South Wales, by Wednesday morning, we'll see the snow levels fall to 600 metres. So on the alpine resorts, looking at 20 to 50 centimetres of snow accumulation. And then areas such as Mount Macedon, the Dandenongs, Canberra, Brindabellas, Oberon, Orange and Bathurst, Katoomba could all see some snow flurries as this system makes its way through. If we have a look at the minimum temperatures, they're not going to change too drastically, even though we've got cold air over the region, because that wind keeps mixing and thermalizing the low-level air. We won't really see that until Thursday, when very strong winds move off into the Tasman, and we're starting to see broad areas of single digits or low single digit temperatures. If we have a look now at the forecast wave heights, we've got waves around 8 metres, very long period waves too, affecting the exposed coast of South Australia, and a lot of that water's piling up along the coast, and with that piling up, it's going to move an anomalous mass of water along the coast, and we'll see some of the tides exceed the highest astronomical tide for the year. So it'll affect the South Australian area very strongly on Monday and Tuesday, and then it will start to move around into Western Victoria, and on Wednesday we could see some nuisance flooding around the eastern reaches of Port Phillip Bay. And that's it from the Bureau. Keep up to date with the latest forecast and warnings on our website, app and social media, and please follow the advice of emergency services.